America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation.
Okay, I'd like to establish a quorum. Julie isn't here. Who is our?
Chris is our acting clerk.
Chris is our acting clerk. Chris is there. Quorum.
We do have a forum.
Okay. Then next would be approval of the agenda. Is there any change of sequence or removal of items?
We will be removing the district administrator update as I indicated to the board with the other items tonight. I am not going to give you an update. It will be part of the district report representation.
Okay, and I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
I also move.
Is there a second?
A second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next, we have the announcements. Oh, no, next we have the audit. Amber, Danielle. Okay, welcome back to Pittsville.
Good evening, everyone. I'm going to go through select pages from the financial statements for the year ended June 30th, 2023. Some pages are pretty much the same as what I've gone through in years past. And again, if you have questions as I go through, please just let me know. So turning just past the table of contents, you'll find your independent auditor's report. It starts out at the top going about with our audit opinions straight out the back. So we audit your governmental activities, which are your full accrual statements. We audit the major fund, which this year was only the general fund that met all the rules to be a major fund. And then we add up all the other funds together and audit those as kind of a collective whole. And so the results of the audit of those different items resulted in our opinion of stating that we believe the numbers present fairly the financial position of the district. And what that means is it's basically a clean audit opinion. It's what the district strives for. We didn't find anything that was materially misstated in the numbers or in footnote disclosures or anything else like that that would have caused us to say something different in that opinion. The way we develop our audit is we follow governmental auditing standards and generally accepted auditing standards. And as part of those standards, we do a risk-based audit. So we come in, talk to Pam, we talk to various members of the district and find out what went on during the year. You know, what might have changed? Did you have new debt? Did you do, what kind of projects, what happened? And from there, we also understand your internal controls. And from there, then we figure out where do we need to spend the majority of our time based on that risk assessment. And then from there, we pick a sample of expenditures, because if we, or a sample of receipts or a sample of journal entries, because obviously if we were here and we're expected to test every single transaction, we probably should be doing the audit. So we pick a sample. Sometimes it's 25, sometimes it's 10, sometimes it's 60. It depends on what the actual area is or what the risk is regarding that item. For single audit purposes, with your federal audit, that tends to be higher sample sizes. But overall, as a result of all that, we didn't find anything that was materially misstated in the numbers or the financial statement disclosures. Any questions about that?
I've just got a question just for starters here.
Yep.
How many other local school districts do you folks audit?
I personally am on 7 other school districts throughout the state. CLA as a whole, I think we do 150
Within the state of Wisconsin?
within the state of Wisconsin. Anywhere from some of the largest to most of them are probably your size, and then we have a couple that are a little smaller.
Okay.
And then I'm gonna move to page 8. This is your balance sheet. So these are your assets and liabilities for your governmental funds as of June 30th, 2023. The middle column there is your general fund, so your main operations fund. The accounting rules make you put Fund 10 and Fund 27 together. So, I know in some of your reports or whatever, Fund 27 may be split out since DPI wants it, but for accounting purposes, it's combined with Fund 10, here in your general fund. So you had $2.5 million of total assets. The majority of your assets was in cash, which is $1.3 million, and taxes receivable of $670,000, and then $370,000 in due from other governments. So that's going to be the grant receivables that were submitted to DPI like in July and got paid in August, kind of thing. That's going to be the majority of your $372,000. You had total liabilities of $884,000. $600,000 of that is amounts due to the other funds because of how your cash deficits work and moving things back and forth. Obviously, those can fluctuate depending on how those other funds did during the year, what kind of receivables and payables they had as well. And that's why sometimes you might see that number fluctuate. The next biggest number there is your $165,000 there, $165,000. That's the accrued and other liabilities. That's gonna be summer payroll benefits that they get paid out until July or August, those type of things. And then the net difference of both your assets and liabilities is your fund balance. So for the general fund, you had $1,625,000 at year end. And there's a couple different categories here. So your $95,000 for non-spendable fund balance, this is your prepaid expenditures. So this is if you prepaid health insurance in June for July, that's gonna be tied up in that. Or if you prepaid property insurance in June for July. You know, basically it's already been spent for, so it's gotta be shown in its own little category, pretty much. Your restricted fund balance of $3,400 here, this is money that a third party said, hey, we're gonna give you this funding, but we're telling you how you can spend it. So a lot of times this is your common school library fund if you have anything not spent at your end, especially for the general fund. In other funds, this might be what you've carried over for debt service to pay for debt payments for the next year, or community service or food service, certain things like that, that third parties have told you, hey, you can only spend it on this or that kind of thing. Your assigned fund balance, these are your tentative management plans. So the big number here, I believe, was unspent purchase orders from the year end that got rolled over, kind of thing. So, you know, that you know you kind of set it aside, but it just didn't happen this year, it happened in the following years. The remaining balance is your unassigned fund balance. There was $1,469,000 in this line as of year end. This is basically the amount that can be used for cash flow purposes, unanticipated expenditures, those kind of things. And one thing that we always look at is just for cash flow purposes, because sometimes if this number gets too low, you might need to short-term borrow. You yourself have set a policy that you want that to be 20% of next year's budget. This amount of $1.4 million is not hitting your budget or your policy amount. You're at 16%, where your policy requires 20%. So it's just something to be aware of, so that way as you're developing your next budgets or as you're watching cash flow, that you might be a little bit more tight on what you have available to pay expenditures. It doesn't necessarily mean you're in a bad position, because some districts put it low as 12%. Some do have it at 15%. What we usually recommend industry-wide is somewhere between 15 and 20%. But you want to take care to make sure that doesn't keep dropping too low, otherwise you could put yourself in a position where you have to short-term borrow or have to make other types of cuts to make sure that you have enough to meet the mandated services. And if you really wanted to see more on that calculation, that's page 46 for how your policy is. Any questions on the general fund? That middle column there, that's the sum of all your other funds, so food service, debt service, capital projects. At year end, you had $1.1 million in all those funds to be used for those various items: community service, food service, debt service. That information is more in detail back on like page 60 to 62 in that range. Moving then to page 10. This is your income statement, so your revenues and expenditures for the year. Your general fund had $8.8 million total revenues. Just under 2.1 was your property taxes. And your state sources were $5.1 million. That was a little bit of an increase from last year because the state had started to give some of that extra funding. Your federal sources were almost $700,000, probably a little bit higher than what you would historically see because of some continued ESSER funding, emergency connectivity funds, this other additional rounds of your Get Kids Ahead grants and different things from the federal government there. Your total expenditures, about 2/3 of the way down, was $9.6 million. The majority of that in instruction and people services, and operations and maintenance, which is where you would expect to see it. You also, if you remember back up, and I'm sure you remember, you had the gym floor flooding stuff there, and that's where you have the proceeds from insurance recoveries for $295,000 showing down there at the bottom. That was split out, so that way readers of the state didn't know that it was kind of something more unusual this year. The expenditures are still up in that operations and maintenance line, But that's why it's down in that category.
I'm sorry,
Overall,
I'm sorry.
yep.
That was an insurance claim though.
Yep, that's where it goes down there. It's called, for financial statement purposes, it's called proceeds from insurance recovery.
Gotcha.
It gets split out instead of just under other sources or even just netted against those costs because of the accounting rules.
I have a question about the revenues for was there property tax relief last year, where the state paid part of people's property taxes to the school?
This 2.1 is the exactly what was actually on the property tax statements themselves. Where you might see the difference, if I'm remembering, if I'm thinking on the same line as you, where it was just where the equalized aid ended up being higher, and so then that's gonna be that state sources line, that was a little higher. Overall, your net fund balance decreased $510,000. So at the beginning of the year, you had $2.1 million, and at the end of the year, you had 1.6. And if you want more detail, the budget to actual statement is on page 49. Basically, most of your categories of expenditures were over budget this year compared, and so that's pretty much what led to the decrease in fund balance. Because there weren't enough, or your revenues were over budget, but not to the extent where it would cover the excess. Any questions on the general fund?
Okay, I'm confused. What did you say?
Or page 49, I might have said 46 instead.
Okay, and what is that actually?
That's your budget to actual statement.
Budget to air.
So the second column from the right is your actual, and then the last column on the right is the variance. So, obviously, because some things weren't too far over budget, but, all the cumulative total is 580,000 expenditures over budget.
Okay.
Any questions on the financial information before I turn to talking about the audit findings? Okay, then if you want to turn to page 76. This page is a summary of our audit results, starting with the financial statement audit and then moving into a single audit. Because once again, the district spent more than $750,000 in federal funds, and so when that happens, the federal single audit kicks in. And in the state of Wisconsin, when you have a federal single audit, you're also required to have a state single audit. There's only a handful of states in the country that are like that, and Wisconsin is one of them. So we do additional testing of specific programs when that happens. So starting off with the financial statements, you'll see under number 2 there that we have the box checked by material weakness and significant deficiencies. These are the findings we've talked about in the past for segregation of duties. You have limited personnel to be able to spread out all the phases of the transactions. And then you also hire us to prepare your financial statement document, which is very consistent with 90% probably of the districts in the state, so it's not unusual. But because those financial statements aren't prepared internally, it does rise up to a finding. And again, nothing considered unusual. I would consider those 2 findings unusual for a district of your size or based on my other experiences with school districts, but again, it is something to be aware of. Any questions on those financial statement findings? Okay, so then moving into the federal awards. This year we tested the child nutrition clusters, the food service claims, and then we also tested the ESSER program. The feds have deemed ESSER as high risk, so pretty much until you're done spending it, we're gonna be testing it kind of thing. And so we did end up with 2 findings with those programs this year. The first one, we'll talk about ESSER. It's basically a continuation of the segregation of duties finding from the financial statements carried over to the grant level. One thing that was new this year is there was an annual report that was due in spring of 2023 based on 21-22 data. And because of the way DPI did it this year, they didn't do it like your normal grant claims. They didn't have you go into WISE grants where then Pam would upload it, Jason would log in and sign off. They did it differently. It was kind of like a survey thing. You kind of went to this website and just hit submit. Well, that didn't necessarily allow you to build in a control where somebody else could review what Pam had entered, even just for clerical errors. We've all been there. We've all typed a 3 instead of a 6 or added a 0. And that's what's important with segregation of duties, is sometimes just to check for those type of things. And just review it for reasonableness based on what you understand the ESSER program has. So that's where that finding came into play. again, continuation of the segregation duties that you have overall, but then diving down a little bit more specific to the ESSER program. Any questions on that finding? Okay, if not, then we'll talk about the child nutrition cluster finding. So this was specific to procurement and to special environment. So when you pay for things with federal funds, the federal government wants each transaction lumped into 1 of 5 different categories. And in our sample, for some of those categories, the history or the documentation of how many quotes you got, who you called, what the dollar amount was, that wasn't kept. It was misplaced, or it was just never able to be found. So because of that, we ended up having to show finding. So our recommendation is to, review what you're doing, what your processes are for locating and centralizing, maybe consider centralizing all that documentation in one spot, so then it's easily obtained or easily verified that, yeah, we did get all the quotes when we needed to, or yes, we went off for bids when we needed to, or any of those type items. And it gets a little, especially when it's certain dollar amounts, you really only need to get quotes. And sometimes what we see is if you go, and you can call for verbal quotes, you don't have to just, do something more formal, but it's putting into a memo, hey, I called this one, these dates, and signing and dating it. Maybe having somebody else review and say, yeah, that makes sense, this is why we're going with this letter, kind of thing. And so our overall recommendation is just review what you're doing for procurement and make sure that everybody understands what needs to be documented and where and when.
So you don't have to legally take the lowest quote, you just have to show that you called.
For certain dollar amounts, yeah, basically if it's under one threshold, and I apologize, I don't remember what your policy is off the top of my head, but the federal policy is if it's below $10,000, you don't even have to get quotes. They just want you to kind of spread it out between vendors so you're not just using one vendor. If it's between $10,000 and $250,000, they want you to get quotes. And at that point, then they just, again, get like 2 quotes and just document who you did and what. You don't have to do, unless you guys set a lower policy threshold, you don't have to go out for bids until you hit that $250,000 mark. And so that's where it just sometimes, falls in between where, especially with the days of online looking up for quotes or whatever, it may or may not have been tracked. So print that screenshot off, print a couple of them, put them in the folder with the contract, and you have all your documentation in one spot. And with that, that was all I was going to go through. Is there any other questions?
You put a lot of hard work into this. We appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Well, this year it was, we appreciate all the work all the help we get from all the departments, because testing food service is different. Pam, this year we had new accounting standards once again, because there's always a new accounting standard that comes into play, and there's always a learning curve with all of that. So we appreciate all the responses back and forth from everybody when we're asking for stuff, because sometimes even we're on a learning curve, so we like to work with as a team and figure out and make sure we're all on the same page.
Any other questions or comments from members? Thank you. I think as a board, I know that coming up in a future meeting, we're going to talk about how the budget is built. I think along with that, we may want to maybe dive into some of the things related to the audit, any policy changes we need to have or anything like that, but we'll let that go for another meeting. So thank you, Amber.
Thank you.
See you next year.
Thank you. Thank you.
I would entertain a motion to approve the 22-23 audit as presented.
Approve the audit as presented.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the audit as presented. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, item number 6, announcements.
I have no specific announcements.
Okay. How about item number 7, celebrations?
More celebrations.
Okay, nothing to celebrate.
Well, we're going to talk about the report card, which I kind of guess is a
Which
celebration.
is a big celebration. Okay, then moving on to number 8, student representative update. Brad?
Nope.
Yeah, so Katie's out sick today, so this is all me today. So the agenda, we're gonna go through dress-up days, we're gonna go through student council volunteering at the Rotary Christmas lights. That's the day that they plan to do it, time, and then a movie day on December 22nd. So the dress-up days are Monday, the 18th through Friday, the 22nd. Student council has organized a bunch of days. I'm not entirely sure what they are yet. They haven't put them up. So if I knew, I'd tell you guys, but I don't. So. But every Friday in December, we've been doing Ugly Sweater Fridays. I keep forgetting, but I have a lot of ugly sweaters that I'd like to wear in. But that's what every Friday is for us. Volunteering at the Rotary Lights. This is last year, as you can see. Student council will be volunteering at the Marshfield Winter Wonderland Lights on Wednesday the 13th. And as I said before, the time, this is, I think, a great way to help food pantries around. I think it's a great thing that they do. And I always see a ton of people there, especially when I went the other day and couldn't find a parking spot. So. And then movie day on December 22nd. I just found out about this it's probably a week now. But supposedly, if students are passing their classes, they will be invited to attend the movie day at Rogers Cinema. We've rented out the theater, and we're still figuring out what movies they're going to be playing. I'm hoping that they play Elf because that's one of my personal favorites. So all students that are passing their classes will be allowed to come, and I'm not sure about the students who aren't passing their classes. I'm guessing they can probably stay back and study. And then that's all I have. Nothing too much for interesting in November. Any questions?
Rotary Winter Wonderland, they do contribute to the Pittsville Food Pantry. They bring food, and at the end of the year, they get a check also. So I think we're all very pleased to see that Pittsville High School be represented there.
And I know Hot Chocolate Hustle went really well. We had a number of students involved with that.
I think that's an example of just fabulous collaboration.
Next month, we'll be doing on the Christmas shop, the rekindling of the Christmas shop ran last week and raised over $1,400 for local food pantry for, yeah. So.
Great community collaboration.
Thank you.
Okay, we're skipping the district administrative report and moving on to the consent agenda items. A, meeting notice certification, regular minutes of November 13, financial status. We have two hirings, a custodian, Jason Kevon, and a junior high wrestling coach. Welcome back, Dan Hahn. I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda as presented. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, now item number 11, our information items. First of all, Mr. Andres and a food service presentation.
All right. Well, first off, I did bring sheets on today, so before you leave, please stop, take them back. I got a homemade Black Forest cookies, because that's actually a new recipe for today, so I want to do a school class too, so please try it, let me know. And then we got coffee, of course, and then homemade apple mold cider, which we're going to have at the high school next week with our Christmas meal, so please feel free to give it a shot for everything. First thing, a little interesting thing we did, there's a new program with Wisconsin Department of Public Education and institution. It's called Wisconsin Farm to School Marketplace. This is a little flyer part. I can call it, I can email everybody if they want to see it too. We're the first school to do it. We kind of helped spearhead it every program. The lady name is Susan Young. She's with EPI with school nutrition. She reached out and me and her kind of put this together. And what it is we take school food service employees, people that are actually in Department of Instruction, and then local farmers and purveyors. And it's gonna be set up in different parts all over the state. And they get together. Ours was last month in November. We were the first one to do it on 15th. Group of us got together and we went to Glacier Lake Cranberries. It's technically Wisconsin Rapids address, but it's only 13 minutes down the road, so. And the idea behind it is way to connect with the school food service people, the local farmers, the state employees, so that everybody can see like what kind of equipment we have, what space we have for storage, what are kind of the roadblocks, like what do we have for staff, labor, equipment, that sort of thing, to kind of push more local foods in the school food service. It worked out really well. We had a big turnout on it. I helped share some recipes we do in our school to other schools in the state. They were happy with that, like our different braids, cranberry homemade barbecue sauce, pulled pork on the pretzel bun we had in class. Not class, lunch one day. We've been doing it every month. We've been doing a different area of the United States in barbecue sauces and doing the meal, kind of different regions. And we did different regions too, like we did a Cubano sandwich in the lower part of Florida, Cuban area. That's kind of Miami's kind of state claim on that now. So different aspects like that, got a lot of good turnout with that. There was a lot of people like that, so that worked out well. We're gonna be looking forward to doing another one next month. And just figuring out where we're gonna go next month. So I got at least a half a dozen different local farmers stuff, contact information, so you start looking forward to getting more stuff and some stuff we started this year with local ingredients. We get our cheese sticks from Masonville now. We get our flatbreads made from Cortesian clover, specifically for us. What else? We got potatoes from Hancock. Then we got numerous ones. Our apples we were getting from Edgar, 34 miles on Rock Ridge when they were still in season. We're getting more and more local stuff in. Another couple of things that we've done. Remember this school year we won an equipment grant for the milk cooler? Well, they had some extra funds, so we applied and we're in the top going forward next. We finished phase 2. So there's a really good chance we'll win the next one. So we got a new salad bar for high school. So hopefully we'll know more within the next month or two if we won that or not. We're right up there though. So if we got past the phase yard, there's a good chance we win it, which would be nice. Let's see what else we have here. Holiday meals coming up. We had our Thanksgiving meal for all the students on our last day before break. We're gonna have our Christmas meal for our last day before break. So that's positive. And then also I want to talk about quickly some of our nutrition standards, what we have to follow, the guidelines. So there's what's going on this school year, because actually they're in the middle of changing it, or how they want to say, proposed rules, standards. It's going to happen starting next school year all the way through 2029. So each year is a little more implement a little more of it. Next year, the main thing is going to be, they're going to limit sugar products in yogurts and cereals and bread items. A lot of that we're already doing, so it won't affect us too much next year. We won't see much for change in our end, our school. Some schools will, but they really haven't been kind of getting ahead of the game. The big thing is going to come in 2025 school year. None of this changes, by the way, which still always could. All the way through grade 8, you won't see flavored milk anymore. It'll only be white milk for kids. Because it's going to be, because they want to reduce all weekly limits of sugars and sodium by 10%. And by doing that, that kind of takes that out. And then in 2027, they want to knock all that down another 10%. And in 2029, another 10%. So what that means is, like right now, the school year we're in right now, for sodium levels through grades 8 for the whole week is 1,225 milligrams, and high school is 1,280. So they want to keep kicking that down by 2029. You're going to be looking at less than 800 milligrams of sodium. So for the whole week. What that means is something to look at, like our cheese sticks we get in, they won't qualify. There's a lot of things that won't qualify anymore, or they're going to change the formula of it, which you can always change things, but at a certain point when you're changing food, it's no longer tasting like that item. I mean, anybody see when we were in school, even chocolate milk, even when I was in school, it was more chocolatey, now it's less because they had to cut so much stuff out of it. That's a really good example of seeing what flavors.
Did you say something about eliminating yogurt?
They're not going to eliminate it. What they want to do is you have to count the sugar and sodium calories towards it. By doing that, you're going to eliminate a lot of the brands. And the brands will have, it'll be lower down, so it's not just gonna be bad, it's just gonna have very less taste to it. It's gonna be very,
I would guess like the Greek yogurt.
yeah, you know,
Just-
it's just gonna be, it's yogurt, but it's not very, as an adult, it'd be fine, but when you're talking like an 8, 9-year-old child, they want a blueberry yogurt, they're expecting to taste like blueberry,
Blueberries.
you know?
I'm expecting.
Yeah.
it to taste like blueberries.
So, I mean, they're still taking people's opinions and comments, and we were always talking about it and try to explain to people that it's getting harder and harder to keep kids interested in stuff when it's getting more and more bland. There's nothing more we can do. There's only so much I can do to a product if I have very strict amounts. And then, like, for example, right now the school year we're in, calories through 5th grade, you can only have 550 to 650 calories in a meal, a lunch. Through 6th to 8th grade, it's 600 to 700. Grades 9 to 12, you get 750 to 850. They want to lower that by 10% each year starting in 2025 to 2029.
When you say they, it's-
DPI, sorry, it's USD and DPI is together.
so this is a federal.
Federal and state levels, they kind of,
And a state, so I wonder if a state.
federal kind of comes up with it and state agrees with it. And then the whole idea behind it is schools can technically opt out of it, but your free and reduce is tied to it. So if you opt out of the program, you have no free and reduce anymore.
Okay, this seems really counterproductive.
Yeah.
Because there's so much talk about food insecurity.
Yeah.
And that this is the best meal that kids get.
Yeah.
And now we're cutting the calories.
Because they're looking at it as, and we do have a problem in the country of juveniles being high diabetic, high sugar rate, but it's not coming from the school meals. I mean, everybody's seeing kids walking around with giant energy drinks and Mountain Dews and.
Ma'am, that would be the question I was gonna ask you, is that obviously this has been enacted because of the increase in childhood obesity. Are they collecting data? Are they seeing that this is reducing childhood obesity? Because I've always felt that a multi-pronged approach like physical activity.
They say it is, but the only thing they're looking at is the children that are continuing to eat the meals at school.
Yeah.
So you're not looking at all aspects of life on weekends, nights, all kinds of stuff going on. So it's really, we're not getting any better. It's not the school food service that is causing these issues.
Right.
I mean, you could, any one of us can come and eat school. I'll be here. Come down to lunch every day. I'll buy you lunch. I guarantee you can eat school lunch here every day for a whole school year. As long as you eat healthy outside of school too, you're not gonna be unhealthy or gain weight or stuff like that. 'Cause it's not our aspect. But it's stuff that they're eating outside of school. But we have no control.
When you talk about like the feds set the guidelines and think, you kind of touched on the free and reduced piece, is that a lot of the federal funding is tied to it. So
Yeah.
states, obviously, it's kind of like, hey, would you like to continue to get
Yeah.
federal
Because
money?
there are some
Which is why
schools throughout the country that do opt out of all this, but then you have no money for free and
they
reduced.
have to.
And when you're doing
cover
with
costs.
50, 60, 70% free students,
The school district,
School
if
district,
you
yeah.
opt out, the school district would be in charge of
And we have to offer.
subsidizing.
then school would have to either not have free and reduced or we'd have to pay
We're
for
not
the.
required to offer free. Pam, am I correct in that? I believe there's no federal requirement to offer free reduced lunch.
If we are not in the national school lunch program, we
Don't
don't.
have to.
No.
But some schools choose to cover that because they still want to offset the cost for folks, but then it has to be built into your
Yeah.
budget.
And a lot of those schools that do that, they usually have some kind of private donor funding, like a big business or a big company that'll fund it.
Yes.
So it's usually in areas that have a giant multi-billion-dollar corporation in their community that it's no, $100,000 check, it's like giving someone a nickel, it's
Yeah.
nothing.
Or it's a rich suburb where they don't
Yeah,
have
exactly.
free and reduced.
So, I mean, you kind of like are stuck with these standards. I always push them to the farthest, because you do have a little range. I take them all the way as far as we can take them. I mean, if you go at the low end of it, it's just sad. I'm just be honest with you, it is. So that's why I was, plus on top of it, then you also have subcategories every day. So like for vegetables, for example, through grade 8, you have to offer at least 3/4 cup of vegetable every day, and 3 3/4 cups throughout the week, and a 5-day school week. Then you have subcategories: dark green, red, orange, legumes, starchy, other, and starchy, other additional vegetables. And each of those have so much you have to offer each day and through the school week too. And like for example, green, dark green, they keep changing it. Like green beans are no longer a green vegetable, according to them. It's other. I know that's
People are pretty sure.
yeah, it's kind of goofy to me, but okay. So they're considered other.
They're
Well, we
other.
consider-
They're other now, yeah. So some of these categories, you have very small amount of items you can pick from to offer. So if you ever see on the menu, I would have baked beans or refried beans once a week, because then that'll cover all the rooms, because the other items are on there, we have tried, and students just don't like them. I mean, we've done hummus, stuff like that, but it's just does not take, and you're just throwing more away than you're serving. You know, you get to know your area. Some parts of the country, they probably love it, but central Wisconsin, nope.
In a way you could make beans,
Yeah.
tasteful would be to add bacon, brown sugar. And
I've done that too, where
Do it, and eat the guidance.
I tweaked them to as far as I can take them, where I cook them with turkey bacon, and I've done like sugar-free root beer, like a root beer baked bean with like barbecue sauce, so it does have more smoking, so it does have more flavor. There is ways around it. You just got to put more in time and do it in thought, which I have, but a lot of schools, they just don't have the background to do it, so that's a positive thing there. So, like I said, we're still kind of, as School Nutrition Association, all our members, pretty much everyone I've ever talked to, and I talk to everybody in our state at least once in the school year that does what I do, and nobody wants this. So everybody's trying to convince them, hey, maybe we should not do this.
So are you commenting on the rules?
Oh yeah, we have different
Draft
Zoom meetings,
rules.
there's actually in-person meetings, there's surveys, every day there's something I have to put out, or we get it together or talk about, or people who directed the state, USDA.
Okay,
How many members are on that committee?
Well, as SNA members, just in the school food service part of it, there's people that are involved, I'd probably say there's 300-400 of us, but people that are actually like signed up in the group, a couple thousand.
So there could be some heavy influence coming from the.
Oh, yeah.
Committee of the.
And actually, your biggest influence is gonna be from the companies that like produce some of these products. You know, like McCain's, for example.
Right.
They were a big one when this happened in 2014, when these all these rules started. They were one of the big companies that really pushed to stop it, because they had to change their whole way of producing stuff, production lines, and everything. It cost them a ton of money. So now they're asking companies to spend millions of dollars again to retool some of this stuff.
okay, so I guess my specific question is, from what I understand, when there's a federal standard that's up for comment, there's an opportunity for individuals or organizations or school boards to comment on.
Yeah, comment,
Those
voice their opinions
comments-
is a big thing they say a lot too.
Well, yeah, who is commenting besides the big agribusiness?
Individual schools, some people, well, the state, DPI with the food service team, they do, but they don't push it too hard because no one's had to enforce it, so they do comment on it, but they don't really disagree, if that makes sense.
I know exactly what you're saying,
Yeah.
yes, I know.
They're not
exactly
saying,
what
hey,
you're
let's do this, but they're not saying, no, let's not do it either.
saying.
At the end of the day, they just kind of like
Yeah.
enforce it, so.
Would it, from the standpoint of, you say, school districts are commenting on it, would it be appropriate for a Board of Education?
It doesn't hurt, I mean, it may not do anything, but at the very least, it can't hurt. Put it that way.
I've commented on plenty of
Yeah.
things.
So, I mean, I am in the process of, it's been knowing about this, so I'm constantly working on new recipes, constantly
Right,
trying to vendor, just kind of stay ahead of it. So it's not like wait till the last minute type thing. If it doesn't change, then fine, no big deal, but I gotta be ahead of it.
yeah, well, I think especially, I look at it from that contradictory thing of food insecurity. We know we have students and families that are experiencing food insecurity, and the idea of cutting their calories.
Oh, yeah.
That just makes my head explode.
Yeah. And then like, I know sodium is, I'm someone that has to watch my sodium intake and my health and everything, but it's getting to a point where they're taking it too far now. So like, for example, if all this goes through by 2029, when the final act goes through, like right now, in our grade, up through 8th grade, sodium levels are 1,150 milligrams per week, 5-day school week. They want to get that down to under 810.
Jeez.
Which, it's 810 still sounds like a big number, but it's really not. If anybody's really looked at any nutrition labels and anything, even healthy items, even like our brioche buns, which are healthier bun, it's still got sodium in it. Everything does.
Cheese sticks.
Yeah. And if you take this sodium out too far, everything just starts to taste like cardboard. It just does. I'm pretty good at seasoning things and things like that, but at a certain point, you're just kind of tennis ball against the wall type thing.
Well, we're seeing, I'm sure, just tons of food being thrown out.
Right now, not really. It's really not that bad right now. It's gonna get
I know
worse.
in grade school, it sounds like there's a lot of that going on.
It's not so bad. A lot of the stuff that goes in the garbage we actually look at, it's not all food. A lot of it's like containers, or it's like a little bit left over from maybe they eat so much. Because it's offer versus serve what schools do. So the students can come through and pick what they want instead of just like traditional. You remember back in the day when you went to the line, hey, you get this, you get this, you get this, and that's it. So now they can pick everything. And some students, especially younger students, their eyes get a little bigger than their stomach some days, and they see all the different items, so they kind of, oh, I'll take one of these, and I'll take one of these, and one of these. When they start eating, and they realize they got this much food, and they got this big of a stomach, so.
Man, I know both the buildings have a table set up.
Yeah, we do that too, yeah.
Can you talk about that?
Yeah,
Or for kids who don't want food that's
They're full, at
prepackaged?
elementary, it's on the same table, we have our napkins and our water and our, forks and all that stuff. The high school, it's a little table next to that table, we have our water. So if an item that's not a high perishable item, something that, you know, is gonna go back, like, they won't throw the cheeseburger on there, because that'll get dirty or dropped on the floor, but like, let's say it's a banana, or, a juice box, or something like that. If the student didn't open it and take it, they can sit at the table when their student can grab it. And we do, it really, I mean, it's rare we have stuff that we don't, is taken. Let's put it that way, it's 99% of the time, another student takes that. And they take for later, eat for a snack, or eat with their lunch, or take it home, whatever they wanna do with it.
So that reduces some of the
Oh,
waste,
yeah.
some of the items, but some of the
Yeah.
perishable stuff, obviously,
Yeah.
can't slap mashed potatoes.
Yeah.
on the table.
Yeah.
So, but I'm just thinking, you know, if we're at a level now where we've got a lot of frustrations with the taste of the food, and they're gonna get stricter, that just means more food in the garbage and more food going to waste. And like Mary Ann said, it's counterintuitive. It just doesn't make any
What
sense.
you're
Because
also-
now you're only gonna have the most hungriest of hungry child trying to get their calories. There's just a mental block somewhere in some people's heads.
What they're doing is they're creating a gap, and and they never wanna do this, because everything they do is trying to get away from it, but they're actually creating one, is your free and reduced students and paid students. So you're changing all your food items, so your paid students, the ones that have a choice, are going to choose it. They're gonna take a cold lunch home, or whatever it may be. Where your free and reduced students, this may be the only choice. So you're creating that divide again, which is something we've been trying forever to stop doing that. We've got a pretty good, this year we've got a pretty good mix with that, I'd have to say. We've had a good turnout with students coming from lunch, we've had positive feedback on today, new items, new ways of doing things. High school, I get a lot of comments from people in there to expand that whole lineup of stuff we always have, so.
I will say, Matt, I go to a few different districts for lunch. I miss your lunch. I do.
Thank you. Yeah, and we got, like, so we always get new items on there. We got a Memphis School barbecue chicken coming up next week. What are some items? We've had all kinds of new items we've been doing. Even we did our Belgian waffles, we've changed it up. I did a homemade blueberry sauce one day on it. Did a homemade peach and vanilla cinnamon sauce. So we're always trying to find new ways, and I always talk to students, feedback them every day, because I'm checking them out. Did you like this? Did you not like it? You want to see this again? Do you not want to see this again? If you don't want it, what would change your idea to have it again? So, well, things like that. So that's helped. It's just now it's getting to a point where I'm getting more handcuffed from these rules. Because, and it's getting worse, it's harder now compared to even 5 years ago, because you have the added costs of ingredients. I mean, everybody's in the grocery store. Everybody's seeing how much food costs have gone just through the roof. It's just, it isn't, hopefully there's an end to that soon, but I've seen it. So, I mean, you got come with your menu ideas, and then figure out what you actually can serve, what kind of equipment we have, service time, that kind of thing. Then you gotta, that one narrows it down. Then you gotta figure all these guidelines that narrows down more. Then you gotta look at now the costs, which even when those don't even work. Some things just are not cost effective to do anymore. Not even close. But just keep up on that, check the prices. Oh, I'm checking those 3-4 times a day because they're constantly changing. So I always get our best deals, do a lot of pre-booking, stuff like that, so we get a better price, even though if I'm booking it 8 months now. I got stuff that's coming next October, but I got a better price on it. People, I know I can get it, so.
What kind of work are we doing with our local grocery store?
Oh, I'm there a couple times a week easily. We got a lot of smaller items in there that we can. I've been working with Gordy on a lot of things too, because then now they got their deli kind of up and going, their hot bar stuff. So eventually I want to get more items from there from them that we can tie into high school bar too. So, yeah.
How about the produce?
They're catering our stuff, Christmas.
What we call it.
How about the produce? Are you, co-buying produce with them?
Not with them because their price points is still a lot more expensive than what I can get it from those things.
Okay.
And two, I get fresh stuff because through our, it's called Favors, fresh fruit and vegetable program. They even expanded to local produce there too. They do it from Clover, but they use local purveyors all in the area. So you get local lettuce, once every week, every Monday exactly. We got fresh cranberries in there. I make fresh cranberry sauce for our meal next week. All that kind of stuff. We got fresh pineapple in. We're gonna slice up tomorrow.
So with that whole idea of with the grocery store coming in and us getting produce and the vegetables, that was obviously looked into and.
Yeah, that was more an aspect that they kind of wanted to use us more than us use them. Because like, for example, tomatoes, they get a case of 90 tomatoes, they're not gonna sell 90 tomatoes.
Right.
So they're looking at once, because they're still doing okay right now, they're still kind of figuring out how much they're gonna sell and price points and all that stuff. So maybe where if we get a case and split it with them,
Yes.
help them all type
So
of
they
thing.
communicate regularly, Matt.
Oh, yeah.
Gordy.
In fact, I was just down there this afternoon.
We're looking for additional opportunities. They're still kind of feeling things out.
Yeah.
In the community.
Yeah.
The deli helps get the deli.
Yeah.
up.
So Matt, I noticed there's a lot of efforts in the high school.
Mhm.
Are there these kind of efforts in
Oh,
the
yeah.
high school?
Definitely. Our elementary kitchen, the high school has been focusing more because we had to get that back up because that one was kind of down when I started here. So I got those numbers up. Oh yeah, it's elementary there all the time. I mean, our numbers are up there, elementary, middle school. Because that was kind of the focus the last year-ish. Get that up. Now we got that to where we needed. So this year we're focusing on high school to get that back up. So yeah.
We went number of kids taking.
Oh yeah. At the elementary, middle school building, per day for lunch, this includes our childcare too. We're almost at the 300 mark every day, right around there. That's just for lunch, breakfast. We're a little over 200 every day. So that's, I don't count that year and a half was free during COVID time because everybody came down, it was free. But if you're looking at apples to apples type thing, like pre-COVID and stuff like that, when it was still paid, like you're not, we're at or above most days. So.
Well, I don't know if we're ever gonna win this battle.
No.
It's gonna be a concern. I'm sure the way it sounds, it's a concern in every single school district.
Oh yeah.
And we're not alone on this.
No, gosh no.
We're fighting a battle that we're just we're
Yeah.
banging our heads against the wall.
Yeah.
And you are pulling your hair out, and it sounds like you're doing a great job with everything you're doing. And I want you to really understand that we appreciate you.
Oh yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah, it's one of those things. It's every day. I mean, I even weekends. I'm calling, talking to people, Zoom meeting, talking, going to meet people. 3 weeks ago on Saturday, I drove down to Madison to Weber Street because that's where their offices are. Talked to them, met with people. I mean, it's all you can do. Just keep pushing forward, staying where we're at.
And I'd like to see your committee keep pushing hard.
Oh yeah, I'm not gonna stop because even like today, like we did, I made homemade creamy chicken dumplings soup. It turned out really good, but there were so many different aspects that I make it. It's like, God, we want to put this into it. You know, it would be so much better for the kids if I could do this, but that would put me 5 milligrams over the sodium level. I would get in trouble for that. So it's just little things like that.
We can't have salt shakers out there.
No, yeah.
No.
They can have my home salt shaker when you prep from the.
But at the high school, I have a flavor station right now. So I have all different seasons. I can't have salt and sodium, but like I do have some different seasons like pepper, but I have like a Montreal steak seasoning type thing, other than hot sauce. So I'm still trying to find things that fit that. At least it's something out there.
We should maybe suggest that the teachers suggest to the students that they, bring their own little salt packets. And then we can't go and say,
As long as I can hear it, I know, but I can't say
"Oh, they're bringing it
anything.
from home, it's a packed lunch."
Yeah. That could be.
Pass it around.
Yeah.
I have two quick questions. First of all, you started out talking about a new program that Pittsville was the pilot.
Yeah, we were the first one to do it, actually.
Can you give the name of that again?
It's called Wisconsin Farm to School Marketplace.
Is it farm, okay, because I've heard farm to school for years, but
Yep.
farm to school marketplace.
The person that's the nutrition program consultant with Wisconsin DPI, her name is Susan Young. So we me and her that kind of work together on this. Yeah, we're at the first year in January, we're working on getting a group together and I'm going somewhere like Athens. There's a local thing to get with schools and find more stuff. So I gotta
Can you
get.
send a digital copy of that to the board?
Yeah.
Yeah, I gotta say that, I'll send it, yeah, ours was Wednesday, November 15th, they had it last month, so they came in. They toured our kitchens, our school, saw what kind of equipment we have, it's kind of compared to other schools. They ask questions like how much labor, timing we have for serving students, all of those little things that, when you figure, okay, if I got these potatoes to get you, are you gonna have time to do things with them?
Very important to get the people from Madison out to the real world.
Oh yeah,
You ain't gonna give them that.
Okay,
I got 2 of them so far,
okay.
so I'm working on the other couple more.
Okay, sounds good. Then the other question I had is, could you please pass on to Jason how the board can comment on those pending
Oh,
federal
yeah.
rules?
Yeah, I will get you
The link is.
yeah, I'll get you the information and like the email addresses and all that stuff that you submit
Yes.
that stuff to and all that.
Would appreciate that.
No problem, that's easy enough. I will email Jason tomorrow. He did help you.
Sounds good.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So when can we have the Black Forest cookies and?
They're sitting there waiting for everybody, so.
Would you like me to bring some up front?
That would be wonderful. Okay.
I've been sitting back here smelling them.
The next informational item is the school report card presentation.
We gotta have Pam pull the presentation up.
I'm sorry, I got distracted.
I will spare
This is
you
a new
from
cookie
hearing
we're gonna
too
try
long.
doing, because with we always do it, our triple chocolate chunk cookie, and I turned it into a cherry porter one. So it's a new one we're gonna have.
I don't care. We need 2 of them.
And believe it or not, that's actually a 100%
For
full
your
grade cookie.
presentation.
Good cooking.
Yeah, especially imagine how great it'd be if I had these full grain and I could actually put like no more things in it.
That's good yourself.
But yeah, it's, sometimes you can, you can tweak it enough.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. So you should have a copy of the report card presentation on your computer. So tonight, Mrs. Anderson and Mrs. Peterson are going to be presenting. Dr. Watson is on duty. And Mrs. Friday will be presenting for the elementary school. I'm going to give an overview kind of for the district level. And then they're going to dig into the high school data for you. There's a lot of slides. There's a lot of information covered. They're going to kind of do an overview. And then if you have any questions after each slide, we'll ask the board if they have any questions. We can be here for 2 hours if we wanted to go through all the data. So we will just go through. If you want some clarification on some things or have questions, please feel free to ask. Okay. So our learning charts, we want to kind of explain what the data in our school report card means, share some takeaways, and then answer any questions the board may have. I am going to clarify up front, they changed the way the school report cards were calculated about, don't quote me, 4 or 5 years ago, they changed the calculations. So Rick noticed when he was looking through, you'll see that some of the longitudinal data, that even though our district score was a little bit lower than some years, it exceeded expectations this year. The way they calculated the scores, that doesn't mean they lowered the standards. They changed the way they calculated it. So the older scores would have been a lower score if if they use the parameters that are used now. So I want to clarify that. Okay. So this data represents a snapshot only, right? There will be some trend data because we think that's important to see over the last 5 years. What has the data shown here? Where are we doing well and showing growth, which there are areas that we are doing that, and where do we need to continue to work? This is last year's data. You've heard me use this term before. This is an autopsy, right? Like we want to be able to treat the patient While we're seeing the symptoms, which is our use of formative and summative assessment during the school year and our progress monitoring that we do, that classroom teachers do. So this is a snapshot of last year's data. But once again, looking at longitudinal data, you can take things away from looking at areas where we see gaps. Very important, students are not test scores, right? We know that. We know that each of these children that come here are unique individuals and they all learn in a different way. And the one thing you will hear me talk about and these other folks when they present is people care about kids here. It's very evident. And I think why Pittsville came out of the COVID dip, as you're gonna see a little bit quicker than some districts, they focused on supporting kids socially and emotionally coming out of there, not just focused on, well, we need to increase the scores. Now that's important, but kids are more than test scores, so we wanna clarify that this is certainly something to be proud of, but our kids are more than test scores. Many of the ways we excel as a district aren't reflected in our data. Like we have an amazing CTE department, right? Like our involvement in our kids and our youth apprenticeships and all those types of components. So there's things that we do really well as a district that you're not going to see reflected in the report card data. So that's kind of a feather in our cap in addition to the report card results, is that we have a lot of other areas that Pittsville excels in. We don't discard data that says we need to improve, right? That's important, is that you celebrate the successes, but you also acknowledge there's areas that we continue to need to grow and improve in, and we need to focus on those things. So it's finding the balance, celebrate the successes, because no one wants to just hear the negatives all the time, right? And we also can't whistle through the graveyard while we see things that need to be addressed. We're gonna use this data can continue to build on our strengths and improve areas we have to grow. So the Pittsville School District achieved a rating of 70.1, which means we exceeded expectations. This is the first time that the district has exceeded expectations since this system was implemented in 2011. You'll see a slide that will indicate, it'll show kind of I believe it goes back all the way to 2011. Pittsville High School achieved a rating of 73.4, which also exceeds expectation. This is the highest rating ever by PHS since beginning the system in 2011. Pittsville Elementary School achieved a rating of 67, which meets expectations, and it's up from a 66.1 a year ago. So here's that longitudinal data. This is at the district level. If we look, so 11, 12, they did not have the report card. First year was 12, 13. And you can kind of see as we went through, this was the first time for the district to exceed expectations. We'll talk about why, what were the things that led us to exceed expectations, both at the high school level and the district level, as we get into that. And you will have a copy of this to review later. I'm gonna stop and ask if there's any questions thus far. Okay? So we look at the priority areas, the areas you're gonna see some pie charts coming up. Student achievement, that's the level of knowledge and skills that they've attained compared to standards, ELA standards. So they set these proficiency standards. We use the forward, the pre-ACT, and the ACT exams. So who's not tested or who doesn't go into this calculation? Seniors don't take any of those tests. And then it's only third grade through 8th grade for the elementary school that are tested. And Heather's gonna talk during her presentation. What do we do for the 4K2 kids? How are they, how do we monitor their progress? And Heather will talk about that. Growth. How rapidly are they gaining knowledge from year to year, right? That's important, especially when you're looking at your kids who are below basic, is that they need to gain knowledge and grow at a faster rate than their peers. Otherwise, they're gonna be lagging all the way along. Now, sounds simple, right? We all know not quite as simple, but we also, that's a focus we put on. Our data is indicating that our kids are growing at a faster rate than their peers significantly in other districts and statewide. Closing gaps, those achievement gaps. So looking at low income students, English language learners, students with disabilities, are we closing the gaps? Because there are significant gaps. If you talk about students who come from the low SES from poverty, typically achieve at a lower rate. Why is that? Because if you think about it, they're going home, and if you're talking about two parents working in the house and there's no one there to help with homework, or there's food insecurity, there's many components that go into, it's hard to focus on English when you're worried about where you're gonna get your next meal from, right? There's data that shows that. The super group, if you have a child with a disability who comes from a low SES, that is your most at-risk students you can deal with when you get into that component. So we look at, are we closing those gaps between our students that are in those groups and our students who are not? On track, post-secondary readiness, are they on track? We're trying to predict their success, like you do the pre-ACT, or you're trying to predict, are they going to be college and career ready? Now, when you say third grade, how are we doing that? Well, third grade reading is a good predictor of future success. You're gonna see that those scores are looking pretty good for us in third grade reading. Eighth grade math, also a great predictor. Once again, looking pretty good right now. So there's some key indicators that are saying we're doing good things here that are gonna lead to success for our students and keeping these doors open for students. So here is the area that kind of breaks down, what does our district look like? We have a students with disability population of 12.6%. So 12.6% of our students are identified as having a disability. That can look like many different things. It could be EBD, it could be SLD, it could be in the area of reading. Like there's many different disabilities that the students can qualify, but 12.6% of our students, I would tell you, with 40% of our families being economically disadvantaged, that's actually, if you were to go in comparative districts our size and look at 40% low SES, which is, it's reasonably high. That's a reasonably high population of our students. There are districts in the state that are 70 or 80% of their students are economically disadvantaged. This is a lower percentage of students with disabilities you would see comparatively when you see that, the number of economically disadvantaged families. So take that for what it's worth. That's what I would tell you. And then as far as English language learners, about 1.2% of our students are English language learners. Okay, so here's the main page of our report card that talks about those priority areas. You can see the upper right there. And then here's the achievement scores, which will be the top left. The target group outcomes. Target group outcomes are students who are in your bottom quartile. So they take from the year before, who are the students who scored in the 25th percentile or below on these tests. They become your target group and they focus on how did those students perform this year. So the bottom 25% from the year before, and then they monitor them and see how did they do in achievement, growth, right? You see all that absenteeism because we know there's a direct correlation between if you come to school. Students who come to school are typically going to achieve at a higher rate than students who don't. So that piece right there, that target group outcome is our students who from the, not last year, the year before, were in the bottom 25% scoring on these tests. How did they do this year? Okay.
So they're actually tracking individual students.
They are tracking those students from the prior year and seeing how they performed in the next year from that bottom quartile. Okay, your growth scores, we're looking at how did our students, and you'll see that they'll list ours and then state average. So you'll see in math, that upper right, you can't see my cursor on there, but if you look, so for growth in math, our students outperformed district-wide, the statewide by about 12 points on the growth scores. English language arts, we're a little bit behind, right? We know that's an area that we'll look at some of the charts later to say that maybe our growth scores are not as significant in our English language arts areas. We feel like we're doing some things and we'll continue to do things that we're going to see a change in that moving forward. On track to graduation, those are those third grade. If you look down below, third grade reading, eighth grade math, you can see we're performing well. Our third grade students in reading and our eighth grade students in math compared to that state average. Now, all right, do we want more? We want to continue to grow, but certainly you don't want to be below state average. You want to use that as kind of a measuring tool.
The state average kind of sucks.
Not gonna lie to you, it does.
Yeah, so we have to be above the state
We are, and that's why it is a data point to look at, but our idea is, like, you're gonna look at all this data and you've probably heard Rod mention it, you're gonna hear Heather mention it, you're gonna me. We're doing some good things here, but the reality is 50% of our kids are still not proficient. Right? So you celebrate the successes, you want to continue to see that growth, but 50% of our kids, on average, are still not proficient. So absolutely, the bar remains high. Yeah.
Average.
Yeah.
We
Okay.
can do better.
So what are our takeaways? And then I'm going to turn it over to the ladies here. Okay, our students are showing growth, specifically in math. We're actually showing extraordinary growth in math with our students. We recovered from that COVID dip more rapidly than most districts. I kind of touched on why I think that is. I think we have great staff. I think we have people who care about kids, and I think when kids are feeling like they're cared for and you have quality educators in front of them, I think they're going to show growth. We need to continue to focus on our proficiency, as despite the growth, half of our students continue to not meet proficiency. If we want to look next year, how are we going to get from exceeds to significantly exceeds? How do we do that? We maintain this growth and we work on that proficiency piece. Now, one would assume that you continue to show growth, you're going to get that proficiency. But that would be the area where we could show the most improvement, where we could get to that next level on the report card with the significantly exceeds, which is approximately, that would be in the top 6% of districts in the state of Wisconsin if you're significantly exceeds. When you're talking exceeds expectations, I think I shared in my communication, we were one of 16 school districts statewide that actually went up a level on the report card, moved from meets to exceeds. There were only 16 school districts in the state that went up from either fails to meet to meets to exceeds, etc. So we were one of 16. So we're doing good things. We got work to do. We've been consistently moving our students from below basic to basic. That's a really good thing, right? Over the past 3 years, we need to continue that growth to get more of our students at proficient. And what we would like to see too, you're going to hear the high school folks. I'm trying not to steal their thunder, but you guys, you hammer down this stuff. What we need to see more of is the kids that are at the basic move into the proficient in proficient to advanced. We want to see more where we push more to that top level, right? Continue to push them up. We're doing a good job on supporting those below basic, getting them to basic, but we got to continue to push with those kids in the middle and at the top. Our approach of meeting the social, emotional, and academic needs, it works and it will continue to work. And this holds true for staff. I wanted to get that in. You not only got to take care of your students, you got to take care of your adults who are with your students, right? And I think we do a pretty good job as a district of focusing on what are the needs of our teachers, caring for our teachers, and making sure that then they're able to care for our students. All right? Ladies, I'm sorry if I don't and you were down on that. So here, the PHS data.
All right, so Jason already went through this, but our students with disabilities, 12.4%, and then our economically disadvantaged is 32.5%. One thing that I think you have to realize is they can fall into both of these categories as well. All right, so Jason talked about how each of these areas are scored. So if you look on the right side with that pie chart, achievement is weighted at a 28.4%, growth is 24.9%, that target group is 26.7%, and then the on track to graduation is 20%. We're going to go through each of these achievement, target group outcomes, growth, and on track to graduation later on in the slides. Both all of these scores average out 73.4, which makes us fall into the exceeds expectation area. You see on the right here, we did not have scores on 2014-15 and 2019-20 because they either were changing tests or COVID. Yeah, read about COVID. Yeah.
Yep, so this is a good slide to see the trends of where we're moving. So this was 2020 to 2021, so the last few years, you can see that we're really closing that kind of amount of students who are testing below basic, which is a really good trend. And this is ELA, so English Language Arts, and we're seeing those patterns in the right way. We obviously have room, like Jason stated, to grow this amount, pushing our advanced learners, but this trend is moving in the right direction. We're increasing these and decreasing these. So that's our English Language Arts. And then, so this is about half, 40 to 19. That's really nice amount. Math, similar trend, which is also really helpful. So we're decreasing that below basic. And then what we hope to see with this rapid growth of what we're kind of tracking district-wide is building some of these up. So you see here that maybe our numbers fluctuated a little bit kind of between who's qualifying in that proficient or advanced, and that's maybe where we have that work to do, but still really important to focus on that decrease of our below basic students. Again, from 50 to 34, 40% to 27, that's pretty good. Growth, this is the high school, so just like the district-wide, we're growing at a really rapid rate. So this breaks down our math and our English. So if we look at English, our students in high school are growing faster than 67% of their peers. And then if we look at the math scores, our students are growing faster than 96% of other high school students in our state. That's really rapid. So hopefully with that rapid growth, then we start to see that increase in our proficiency in our advanced learning. But that's a really strong growth score.
All right, so this is Jason's favorite slide. Your ELA is on the left side here. So you'll see that the groups that have fewer than 20 students are not calculated in this at all, okay? So in ELA, this is on a 6-point scale. We're all above average, which is good. If we look on math, one thing that I really want to highlight here is when you're looking at that average score, if we look at our economically disadvantaged compared to our not economically disadvantaged, they're growing at almost the exact same rate, which is fantastic. Filling in for Rod, I've been able to insert myself into the classrooms to observe more. I'm over here, I'm kind of by myself. I love the area, but I love being in their classrooms as well. And I can say that our high school teachers and elementary school teachers are fantastic. They're doing such a great job of making sure that they're hitting all of those skill bands, those basic, learners, proficient, and advanced. And it's awesome. So
And this is evidence of that. You
Correct.
look at this and that's what you were trying.
This one is definitely worth pointing out too. So students who were proficient last year, we can look at ELA and math, they're still like outperforming. So just because they were proficient last year doesn't mean they're staying there. They're still growing and they're still rapidly growing compared to the average. So that's, I think, really important to note too, that we don't just get them to proficient and they're good, we're still continuing really strong growth.
So,
Melissa,
oh yeah, are there questions? Sorry, we keep going.
that's okay.
so I'm just, I get it, but I'm also looking at the numbers. Is it like
That,
standard deviations? Is
that line is, so if you.
That line's the state
That
average.
line is the state average for each of those
Right.
demographics, and then this is how, so you want to be to the right of that line.
Right,
And if you were to look at 3 years of this data for like AHS, those dots were all on the left side of the line
Right.
3 years ago, and they've been steadily moving to the right now, significantly over. So that means when you take the apples to apples comparison of a student who's economically disadvantaged, like this is outstanding to
Right.
see. to
Oh,
see this.
yeah. Especially on the math end of things. But are these like standard deviations, or should I just be happy with the fact that we're moving to the right?
It is comparative. They just set it up on that linear scale of a 5-point scale
Okay,
to show like achievement wise
got it.
where are our
Okay,
students.
so
So
it's
that,
a 5-point scale.
and you need to,
Okay.
yeah, if we
It's 6
focus
points,
on,
yeah.
what did I
It's
say?
six.
It's 6? Well,
It's 6.
it's 6, my bad.
Okay.
It's 6. But the
Okay,
point being, we
six.
want
Oh,
to
I see,
continue to
yeah.
move to the right of that.
Right,
And what we're seeing is we had stagnated a little bit with English, language arts. Like we're not losing ground, but we're growing, but not at that rate.
got it.
But once again, some of the things we're implementing and we have been working on and stuff, we're confident that we're gonna start to see that growth also in there. But this, if you were to ask me, what is one thing you could pick out to say, why do I feel confident about where we're going in the future? This alone right here to talk about how are we supporting all of our students is pretty phenomenal.
And I really like to see that proficiency staying, moving forward like that. It kind of sets a standard for everybody else, and it's just impressive to see that we're still keeping our advanced students moving forward,
Mhm.
because that's a big problem in a lot of schools. It's like they gotta, they always like seem to cut these others off because they're busy trying to keep everybody in line.
Mhm.
Rod has really done a good job with the gifted and talented program and really pushing that at the high school as well, and making sure that there's enrichments for our advanced learners to take.
And if you were to ask me, if I were to come in outside and look at this district data, and let's say I've heard people talk about how we really care for our kids here and support our kids. If I were to look at economically disadvantaged students versus non-economically and see that our students are performing on, I would tell you right there that district supports those students, because there's data that would show you typically those students lag their peers, and that's not happening here, so.
I have a question on the score summary. Did you say that the overall number, the 73.4 in this case, are we comparing apples to apples from years past or not?
No apples to apples, it
So
changed.
how much?
Well, what they did, when they changed the way you calculated the report card from years ago, they didn't take into account those target groups. More or less, it didn't matter if you were New Berlin Eisenhower, who had 4% of your students in poverty, or a district that had 80%, it was just raw scores to raw scores. What they did is they took those components into account that are barriers that districts are gonna deal with. If you have a high population of English language learners, I mean, obviously there are supports that need to be available for those students to achieve. So they changed the way the report card was calculated to take all of those other things and more or less to level the playing field on the report card to make it more applicable to districts who maybe had students who were struggling learners, those types of things. So
that changed this.
4 years ago.
4 years ago.
Or pre-COVID.
Right,
They
so
changed
the
that.
last comparing the same data.
That is apples to apples since the year before COVID, I would even tell you, maybe even the year before that. I'll get that exact date. They've changed, honestly, they went from Badger exam to forward to all these different calculations, but pre-COVID, for sure, the year before pre-COVID was this new type of calculation. So the last 4 years, and there wasn't any COVID year, would be apples to apples comparisons to see the growth on the report card. Yes.
Okay, according to slide 11, they didn't do a report in 14-15, and that's because they were changing.
Was that the changeover?
Yeah.
I feel like I'm not, and I know they did change it over, but I feel like they didn't do the value added stuff until after that. I could be wrong. I'll check and find out the exact date, but I can tell you this much, at least going back 4 to 5 years, you can look at apples to apples, looking at that score. Okay, go ahead, guys. Sorry.
Keep moving.
Yep.
So this is our target group, so that's the 25% of those students that are scoring the lowest. So our school score was the same or higher than 83.7% of other schools in the state. So we're in the 69.7 range, which obviously is going pretty close to going into that next category as well. I don't know, Casey, do you have any more?
No, I would say you hit the nail on the head, is that top piece there where it says, so with our bottom quartile of our students who scored the lowest last year, we were able to show growth with those students better than 84% of other students in the similar statewide. But yes.
This is just breaking down what you just saw, so that overall score, and then it's breaking down the categories that we've been continuing to talk about, but only with that target population, that low 25%.
How did they perform against their peers?
Yes, so
here
you
at
can
Pittsville?
then see that non-target group and where we're hitting, so there's obviously areas to improve in the achievement, but we're still getting them close to where we need them to be in many of our areas. In our growth, you can see that they're right on track, they're just a little bit behind in this, I'm not really sure, maybe I'm gonna answer how.
Just their peers, like that is, remember, that's just for them versus the non-target group kids here in Pittsville. So that means, we're showing phenomenal growth, but that means just with that target group, the bottom quartile, they're growing at a slightly slower range than their peers. Not surprising, to be frank with you. It's close though. Those bottom two pieces are important to look at because chronic absenteeism, this would be a question I would ask if I'm analyzing report card data. So those kids who are in the bottom quartile, there's many components that could be leading to them being in that bottom quartile. Often, if you look at attendance and chronic absenteeism, so that's why you see like we're part of the task force for attendance, like where Ron Klein is working on ways to get kids to come to school because that matters. So that would be a piece of identifying why are we seeing these students struggle.
And a higher number in this is better.
Better, yep.
Yes.
And then looking at track to graduation, we're doing a pretty good job that bottom quartile are still performing at that point where they're on track for graduation.
this is me. Let's see here. So again, we just talked about the on track to graduation. Higher score is better, so we have 89.1. So students nearly always graduate on time and are slightly better than the state average regarding absenteeism.
And I would anticipate, I think we're looking as far as chronic absenteeism, we're better this year. We've made improvements and strides from early reports from both Ron and Rod, and I think we're gonna see an increase in that score for next year.
So in regards to post-secondary preparation, I know that we are all very, very proud of this slide. So our advanced courses, 41 students successfully completed at least one AP class. So at the state, it's 20.1%, and we're at 24.7%. I can speak on dual enrollment. So 85 students successfully completed at least one dual enrollment course. So state was 23.2, we're at a whopping 51.2%. Our dual credit classes, you need to have a passing grade of a C minus. But what's interesting with mid-state is their grade scale is different than our grade scale at the high school. So a passing grade would be a 60%, a D, right? A C minus at mid-state is 78 to 79%. So not only are, they're getting that dual enrollment, but they have to achieve a higher grade to actually get that dual credit. So I think that's awesome.
And this does not count. This stuff right you're seeing does not count on the report card. They share this. So before when we said we do a lot of really good things that don't count, this data is just for, they put this out to kind of as a brag sheet, but it doesn't count on the report card.
And if I'm correct or not, you'll have to help me out with this, Jason. A lot of this is how things are coded in Skyward as well. So making sure that in years past, I think our numbers would have been a lot higher. But now our CISA has really helped and connected with Stephen Hatfield and the rest of the CTE team, making sure that those codes connect with what's in Skyward and then what we have in our classroom. So every single student is making sure that they're getting dual credit on their transcript, but then also it's getting reported to the state.
And they changed the codes in my former district. 1 year we were reported as having 0 students because the codes were all off. And we didn't get any credit for it.
Yeah, the same thing happened to us
So,
a number of years ago.
because I would say honestly that the industry recognized credentials number seems low to me. The 7.8% of students.
13.
Or Stephen Hatfield.
Right, I just feel but I know that they fixed the same issue we were dealing with down in my former, like that coding error was fixed.
And then here we just talked about industry recognized credentials, and then work-based learning. So state's at 8.5%, our school 21.1%. 35 students participated in a work-based learning program. That's for juniors and seniors. So with a graduating class of, let's just say 40 to 45, if we have 35 students out of the 80, 85 kids, that's really good.
Impressive.
Really, really good. Next slide. Art and music. We obviously don't offer dance or theater, and the state averages are really low because not many schools offer that. So 32 students successfully completed at least one at art and design course. We're at 19.3. And then music, 50 students successfully completed at least one music course. That's 30.1% compared to the state, which is 19.1%.
And I'd like to touch on that, just briefly on that. When you are in a district where there is shared staff and it's a singleton, so you have one art teacher, it can be restrictive to students in their schedule to take courses. And that's the limitations of being a small district, right? If you have schools who have 3 art teachers, you're gonna see a higher percentage of kids taking art class because they can offer it multiple blocks and multiple times. That's just the reality of being in a smaller district. Those are pretty good numbers, but I am certainly telling you that if we had more art offerings and flexibility in the schedule, we would see those numbers increase significantly.
Yeah, art specifically fills up very,
Very
fast.
quickly.
It's very competitive to get into that classes. All right, so the major takeaways, I think they align pretty well with the district takeaways. So our math growth numbers at 96%, that's 30 points above the state average. That's a really strong growth. Our graduation rate is something to celebrate for sure. That's a 7-year average. We think we factored in the one maybe that got lost in there after they left us and maybe they come back. The proficiency rating, both ELA and math, we have improved over the last 2 years. So kind of coming off of COVID, we're making those gains, in both subjects. Post-secondary readiness, we already talked about, those are really strong numbers, and I think that as we continue, I think we're gonna see those numbers continue to grow. Areas of improvement, because we have a really strong growth and we're seeing things move in the right trend, we do still want to touch on what Jason already covered, is that we still are only getting, we're at above average, but it's below our expectations. So we're still trying to hold our school and our district to higher expectations and know that there is always a lot of work that we can do to continue to increase that achievement. And in doing so, we have the ability to grow those advanced learners and support those learners who are lacking those skills. So we need to work in both areas, that work doesn't stop. And all of that will contribute to a stronger achievement rating as we see with our growth rates.
Any questions on the PHS data?
I just have one quick question, just more from, like, obviously heard and read the things that Jason said, but from your perspective, what are some things that are going on that's leading to the positive trend? Because, I agree with like a lot of things he said, but I believe 3 years ago, you really cared about our kids too.
Right.
I mean, I don't think that's changed.
I really do think our early release time for PLC is going to be affecting this even more right now, especially our ELA and math teachers. They have that time to really hone in on all students. The strategic pillar, we're not just looking at those basic kids. What can we do with the advanced learners? So we're offering enrichments for them during our PPT. Every 2 weeks, 2 staff members are expected to offer 2 different types of enrichment for students to sign up. That early release time, they are working on the students that are lagging. What can we do to turn in those assignments, things like that. But I think even prior to the early release time, which, where am I here? Here, I was gonna say. Can you think of anything else? I'm sorry.
I don't have, I guess, being at the high school just for my first year this year, I personally don't have that experience to know, but what I'm seeing is, again, that push of those students to take the class that's most appropriate for them, so they're in the right place to learn at the right time. I think there's some reflection on the math class or what class students should be, and I'm sure that's been going on, but I'm just noticing that with myself, of just really helping the student make sure they're in the right place at the right time in their high school career. That can really be important. If you're taking that advanced math class not at the right time for you, then you're not going to be growing as quickly as you can, testing as well as you can. So that's my only 2 cents.
No, that's good, and I'm very glad you said that, because it's, it'd be easy for me to infer that that was a very big change. And that, it's funny that Dr. Moss is in here, because he reminds me about over a year ago when I asked him how we know if this works, because, change is scary, and there was a lot of feedback about people not liking that, going to the early release. Now, I'm not saying like if it had gone that way, that wouldn't mean it's not working. I think it is evidence that something changed.
Yes.
And that's a direction you're heading. So, I know there are people that have followed back up with that had concerns when we looked at the change.
Yes.
Thank you.
Great, so, our data is, we have 13.1% students with disabilities, 41.5% disadvantage at the elementary school, and, we are compared to other schools that are 4K through 8. Okay. And our overall summary is, the score is 67, and here's our trends here. As you go up, keep going here, and they're on our way back up. Again, I will go through each of these. At the elementary school, these 2 are weighted. The target groups and the on-track graduation are equal. And then the 2 up here depend on your economically disadvantaged kids. So we have more weight towards our growth because of our economic disadvantage numbers.
And you may have noticed that the elementary school is higher as far as the low SES than the high school data. That's typical. You're typically going to see that those numbers do decrease as you get into the high school level.
So here's our 3 years of board exam for ELA. So you can kind of see we're a little bit more consistent. So we would like to see this decreasing here. And then our advanced learners kind of went down a little bit and they're back up. So we have just a little bit of increase in proficiency in ELA, so from 39 to 41, and then our below basic increased just a little bit from 21 to 25. So not a lot of change, but we definitely want to see it go, these get smaller. That's ELA. In math, we also have seen some growth here. So from 39 to 43, we increased here. We're getting this a little bit decreased here. So definitely seeing more growth in math and ELA. So our growth score is 60.3, ELA is 56.5, math is 64.1, so average out. And then this is definitely not as great as the high school, because our school is higher than 23% of the schools in the state when we measure growth. So definitely an area we want to work on too. And our ELA scores, this has kind of been consistent in the last few years. We're just slightly below the average for our value added. And we're just a little bit below here as far as average. And if we look at our proficiency rate, we're just average, like right on average. So we definitely know that we need growth in both areas with the focus on reading. So our target score, 58.6. Again, we are higher than 31% of the K-8 schools. The next slide will show you a little bit more detail on how our target group is performing. So here, this is the achievement. So again, the students that are scoring below 25%, they are not achieving as much as the target group here. Our growth scores are pretty consistent right here and just a little bit below in math. So close to the non-target group in ELA and just a little bit below math. We have pretty consistent scores for absenteeism, and then our attendance rate is equal to with both the groups. On track to graduation at the elementary school, they focus on the attendance and absenteeism, but just like Jason said earlier, the third grade ELA scores and the 8th grade math scores are the indicators that get us our score. So this is a celebration, I guess, because for on track to graduation, we are higher than about 76% of the schools. So I think these are, we're a little bit above the state average here in ELA and about 8 points in math. And some takeaways for us is, just like I just shared, the achievement scores in math and ELA are about state average. The on track to graduation indicators are something to celebrate. And then our areas of improvement are the growth scores in math and ELA are just slightly below the state average. And then our math and ELA target group achievement scores are significantly below the non-target groups. And the value added growth scores are just slightly below the average. And we are aware of these things. And so like our research with Act 20 in the science of reading, our teachers now are, they are researching on their own and already implementing some of the strategies that they're trying. So they are aware. Our formal training will come later, but they are being proactive with that. We also have an instructional coach at the primary level. So we're doing coaching this year as well as she's working with some of those groups that in grade levels that we need extra help. So that's been a positive too. And then, so the school report card does not include 4K through 2. So this year, remember we replaced PALS. So FastBridge is our assessment that we do for 4K2. So each grade level will assess in the fall, winter, and spring. And I haven't really dove into the reports like the teachers and our instructional coach, but after the students are assessed in the fall, they have reports that are available to see your class as a whole, and then individual reports to show exactly what the students need to be working on. So overall, like they, this assess, word segmenting, letter identification, sounds, rhymes, and all of that. But they don't actually assess the same exact thing fall, winter, spring. So it's not like we can really compare the results. We just need to keep looking at the benchmarks of where they should be at that time. And it just gives teachers very specific information on what the students need and what skills they can work on. So that's what we do at the primary or the 4K through 2. That may change next year because the state is deciding on one assessment for the whole state. So we'll see.
Right, 20.
Yes.
And that'll be 4K through 8, that assess, or, 4K through 3, correct? The assessment, I think they were talking about through 3, but it'll be 4K students will be assessed with whatever they come up with that, is that statewide assessment. This is what takes place on the Wednesday early releases, as well as this data discussion when you're talking about, those are the types of conversations that are happening in the primary grades.
In August, if you remember, the elementary really focused on going through the forward exam results, which we hadn't done in the past. So that's when we made our grade level goals and our school goals from the forward exam information. So teachers are definitely more aware of the results of our forward exam too.
Thank you. Questions? I think we're on the right track. Good job. Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Okay, let's go on to agenda item number 12, discussion and action on a variety of policies.
Yeah, many of these are just were recommendations as far as some we didn't have, like now that we have a strategic plan, we felt that we needed to have a strategic planning policy. There would be the one I would like to point out specifically when we get to it, if you saw the communication from me on Friday, the public participation at board meetings. I heard from several of you, and I felt the same way, was not aware that the requirement of people being here at the board meeting to fill out a blue card. What I heard from the board is that we would like this to be an open forum where folks can show up in the middle of the forum and fill out a blue card and speak at any point prior to public comments, which is, I would say, what I'm used to in the past, like, is that you fill out a blue card as long as that agenda item is not met. We're not at that. So the language change, just removing that time deadline to allow people to come in and do public comment all the way up until the agenda item is completed. So that would be the one we're asking the board. My understanding would be the board feels the same way about this, is we're asking to waive the second and third readings so that we can implement that starting at next month's meeting to allow public input at any point up until that. The rest would be first readings.
I do have a comment on policy 151.
Okay.
Let's see, that's the one about procedure for boards adopt, wait, is that the one?
Powers and duties, what you said.
No, yeah, but it was on suspending a policy.
Yeah, that's the one. Second page.
Yeah, the suspend a policy thing. Boy, I just, and I'm assuming this is WASB.
It is.
But, it says here that a board policy may be suspended as described if it's supported by a majority of the full membership of the board. Majority versus 2/3? I mean, to me, suspending a policy for an individual situation, I don't know how others feel about that. But it only takes a simple majority. And to me, you establish policy for a purpose. But then if you want to make an exception for one situation, we can suspend that policy with only a full majority. I mean, to me, it seems like it should be 2/3 majority. But maybe I'm just being obtuse.
3 out of 5 is 60%. So
60.
Instead of 60,
Okay.
We have a
I guess it
5%
is.
board.
Yeah, I
It's
guess,
hard
okay,
to get 66%.
okay.
I mean,
Okay, that was my concern on that one. I would entertain a motion to, accept the changes to policy 187 rule, public participation at board meetings, and approve this for immediate implementation.
I will second that motion.
No, I just said I
No
would
motion.
entertain a motion.
I will then,
Make.
let me then make a motion.
Okay,
Okay,
okay. It's been moved and seconded to accept the change to policy 187 rule for immediate implementation. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Okay,
The first readings.
okay. I have a question on 672. Is this a brand, no, it's not a brand new. What are the changes? Because it says that first reading of updates, but there's no updates highlighted.
Pam, is this the one where we just struck the?
Yep,
lines?
John, let me look at this.
It was just the language, I think where it's struck, right here, Mary Ann.
Yeah.
Director of Business Services.
Yes, correct.
Oh, okay.
We wanted it left to only be district administrator to have the right to make construction and remodeling.
Otherwise,
Okay.
technically,
Decisions.
the Director of Business.
Okay, got
The
it.
way the language was written, so it was just striking
Got
that particular.
And I was looking for something yellow.
No.
Okay, so I understand. Thank you for pointing that out. Any other comments on the first reading of the policy updates? Okay. Then we'll bring those forward at the next meeting.
For a second.
Yeah.
And we will communicate the changes. I plan on, actually, in my weekly communication, I'm gonna indicate the change to the public comment so that folks are aware of that.
Excellent.
Good.
Sounds good. Okay, item 13, the legislative update. First of all, I did hear from Senator Teston's office, and he would be available to meet this coming Wednesday at 4 p.m. Can board members, which board members can attend?
You said it was this Thursday?
This Wednesday.
This Wednesday. At 4
Wednesday at 4 p.m.
Maybe you're a little later.
Four is gonna be difficult for me as well.
Might have to have an assistant.
How do you know I was referring to my other job?
Okay. So can people make that, or should we say no thanks and try to set something up in January?
I'm not sure right now if I can or not. I have not heard. I have another meeting that night. and
Okay.
I haven't heard just when.
Yeah, I would not want to look it up. I could like by 5 or after 5. But that's not it.
Okay. Well, what I
If you want to
did,
ask them to come home later, then I would be a lot more likely.
Agreed, same here, but I mean, I will comment for if
okay,
that's the only time he's available.
okay, because I did give the option of 7 in the morning or after 4 p.m.
Was Senator Teston when I went last time? Did he go
Yes.
last time? Okay.
Yep.
So
On the tour?
Yeah.
Okay,
I don't mind meeting them together.
Yeah.
yeah, well, we got some heavy.
We got some stuff that we
talk.
have to, but finally, perhaps reach out if they could do, so Nate, you're saying it's more likely at 5, Chris?
Yeah, that's fine. I'm open to it.
Okay.
Okay, I will
I'm
talk
trying to start at
to,
4 and I just jump in when I get here. I mean, it's gonna really depend on what my day. I have meetings like at
Yeah.
3 and I drive from Marshfield, so it's probably not like gonna be there at 4.
okay. I will talk to, his chief of staff and see if we can get it changed to, either 5 p.m., well, preferably 5 p.m.
Yes.
See if he would go for 4:30, would people,
I was just, I'm immediately, I'll
Yeah.
I'll come.
you'd be
See
hopping
if
in?
5 work. I think that.
Yeah, if you had
Just let us know.
Okay, okay, I'll send an email tonight and we'll see what we can do. Otherwise, in terms of the legislature, recently the governor signed a bill that requires, 0.5 credit of
Personal
financial literacy.
Which we already do
Mhm.
and have done historically here at Pittsville, and we just need to report that now.
Yep.
So we're already ahead of the game.
That's a good thing. There are a couple other bills, kind of interesting. One is that school boards would be required to have a policy for notifying parents of what their children check out of the school library,
So that one.
considering what we just talked about. Also, a really cool one, there's such a shortage of school psychologists. They're proposing a loan program. You know, if you work a certain period of time, you get your school loans forgiven. You work as a school psychologist, yeah.
In any district or just certain kinds of districts?
I think it's any
Any
district.
district, there's
Yeah.
a nationwide shortage of school personnel,
And,
school student services.
Yeah. and the other thing, which I thought was really hilarious, was we just did the first reading of a bill, a policy related to procurement. It would lower the threshold for for competitive bidding for school districts to $150,000. I just thought that was pretty ironic. Otherwise, they're all home for the holidays and hopefully aren't making any more trouble until about the 10th of January. And speaking of the 10th of January, when we have our next well, I guess that's future agenda items.
Mhm.
Okay, that's all I have for legislative updates. Anything else? Okay.
I just wanted to mention that there's they're considering a bill. One of the Republican, let's see. Assembly Republican is circulating a bill right now to allow a reimbursement under DPI of $250 to individual teachers for out-of-pocket expenses in the classrooms. That's just in discussion right now. They're trying to put a bill together.
Oh, interesting. Because I think right now you get a tax deduction.
Yeah, they used to have the reimbursement piece and then they changed it. And many teachers spend much more than that out of pocket, so
Mhm.
it was a major hit to a
Doing
lot of
something, I
educators.
guess.
Yeah, interesting. We'll have to keep an eye on that when that gets introduced. Okay, item number 14, public comments.
There are none.
Okay, future agenda items. Future agenda item for January is we have to go through those WASB.
These,
That was last year's.
no,
These are this year's, aren't they?
Official just came in the mail, the delegate mailing right
The
here.
delegate
I
package.
got it just today. Yep, you did too.
Yeah.
this is
I
what was
thought it
in
was special. You got one?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, that's what exists, the one that you have in your hands.
Except that it's got a lot of governances. I don't think, you think this is one they did last year?
No, that is the historical document. Every year it's added to.
Oh, okay, because a lot of them in here
Guidance.
were, a couple of different school districts down around Madison who wanted to see changes, who put them in here.
So this will be where we make our our recommendations
we
and that'll be
talk.
at the next
Right,
meeting.
that'll
We
be
will
the
go through.
January meeting.
Yeah,
And I believe you have some other.
I
things
do,
on the
I would,
docket.
the board had, so you saw my email from Pam asking for specific items that you'd like to see with that, kind of the school finance report. If you have any additional ones, please share that with me. And then Ron Klein is coming in January to give an update on, the board had asked about the, I just drew a blank, not Head Start, Jumpstart, I was gonna say Head Start. The Jumpstart program in the summer that we use for struggling learners, and then our after-school program that has been implemented this year, that's part of that $80,000 grant. Ron's gonna give an update on both of those, how we're doing with those and some of the activities kids are engaging in. Our numbers are ballooning right now, students participating. So those will be the items I would have for next month to add on to the agenda. And I don't know if the board has any other items. Oh, Pam,
I was not gonna do the budget one until February.
which is fine. Yeah, I'm
Okay.
sorry. Thank you for the
Okay.
reminder on that.
All right, thank you.
Yep, it's coming, but I,
That's probably good.
she wants to prepare information, so if you have ideas of things you'd like to
It's much
see.
better in February for us.
because we have WASB in January and it's gonna be a busy month.
Right.
So any other items or anything, you know, we've done the food service presentation, we did the, you know, the, how we support our students with disabilities, Matt did. We have the budget one coming up. If there's any other things that, we have the grants is on the agenda. That's just been one that, to be frank with you, with other things going on right now, it's coming. Talked about, Chris had requested about, grant writing, and that school safety is on there. We have kind of a running list, Deb and I do. So I could conceivably tell you, Ron coming in January. I don't know what else is gonna be on that January meeting. We could potentially do the school safety presentation in January.
And that would be Chief Tour.
Well, it'd be a comprehensive, like I'd go over our audit from last year.
Bingo.
Kind of talk about maybe some of the areas that we've addressed as far as what do we do for making sure that our students are safe, staff and students are safe, more of a comprehensive presentation. Chris, that's what you were kind of envisioning, yes? It would be me and Chief, we would put it together
Yes,
together, but it would be a holistic, not
Maybe
just
here.
about the SRO, it would be the SRO and all other
Yeah.
components of school safety, I'm
That'd be
assuming.
great.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
He and I would co-present.
Got it.
I will talk to Chief and see his availability, and if he is available, then we'll plan on doing that for January.
Okay, item 16 would be adjournment. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. And 8:53. Not bad.
Not bad.
What, so I have not gone in person to Milwaukee.
Yeah.
What day do we leave? Is it?
Well,